Caitlin Clark finished the game against the Dallas Wings with 20 points on 6 shot attempts. That number is worth dwelling on, not because it is surprising at this stage of her development, but because of what it reveals about how she operates. Most guards in this league need 3 times the volume to reach that total. Clark barely needed to shoot the ball, and she was already dictating how the game unfolded. She drew fouls with regularity. She manipulated the Dallas defense through movement and positioning. She used ball screens the way experienced veterans do, not simply as a mechanism to get open, but as a tool to read and exploit whichever coverage the defense chose. When Dallas went under, she pulled up. When they went over, she turned the corner. When they hedged, she delivered the pass before the help arrived. That is not rookie behavior. That is not even second-year behavior in most cases. That is the kind of floor reading that teams spend years waiting for their franchise player to develop. And Clark is already doing it at a level that has put the entire league on notice. But the game itself told a more complicated story than the box score suggests. Indiana won stretches of this contest looking like exactly the team their supporters believe they can become. Fast, offensively inventive, and capable of sustaining pressure that most defenses cannot absorb. Then the game would shift. Defensive rotations arrived a half-second late. Transition coverage broke down without warning. Dallas found open shooters in positions that should never have been available, and they converted with the kind of calm efficiency that comes from a team that has been practicing its spacing for weeks. That cycle repeated itself throughout the night, and it matters because it was not the first time Indiana has shown this particular pattern. The offense can move and score. The defense can and does collapse at the wrong moment. If the Fever are going to build on what Clark is giving them, that second half of the equation needs to improve, and it needs to improve with some consistency before the regular season establishes habits that are difficult to break. The most important aspect of Clark's performance was not the scoring. It was the absence of strain. There was nothing forced about the way she played. She came off screens at the right pace, neither hurrying nor waiting. She attacked gaps without telegraphing her intent. She made contact with ball handlers at mid-range and altered timing without overcommitting. And when she got defenders on her hip, isolated, positioned, with nowhere to recover to, she controlled the pace of the drive the way a quarterback controls the pocket, not reacting to chaos but creating order within it. Dallas never looked comfortable with her on the floor. One sequence in particular demonstrated the kind of threat she has become. Driving toward the lane, Clark drew the weak side help defender out of position. The moment that defender committed, she delivered a pass to Aisha Hines-Allen inside. Not a floated wait-and-see pass, but a direct, decisive pass that arrived exactly when it needed to. Easy basket. The decision was made before the play looked open to anyone else watching. That is the type of read that separates good point guards from elite ones. It is what coaches refer to when they talk about seeing the floor in advance. Clark is doing it now in live game conditions against defense schemes that were specifically designed to take her out of her comfort zone. The backdoor feed to Kelsey Mitchell was another example. Clark barely gestured toward the cut. She held the defender's attention just long enough, then released the ball into a window that existed for less than a second. Mitchell converted. The whole sequence lasted about 3 seconds and looked entirely unremarkable, which is exactly how plays like that are supposed to look when they are executed correctly. The difficulty is invisible. There is a tendency in coverage of Clark to reduce her to her shooting, the step-back range, the logo attempts, the pull-up off the dribble. Those shots are real and they matter, but they are not what makes defending her so complicated. What makes her genuinely difficult to guard is the sequence of threats she represents at any given moment. Defending her at the three-point line means conceding a lane. Sagging off her to protect the lane means giving up a shot that she can make from 30 feet. Trapping her forces the ball out of her hands, but she has the passing ability to punish a trap as often as not. Dallas used all of those coverages at various points. The traps were aggressive. Defenders picked her up earlier than most teams bothered to, pressing the moment she received the ball. The physicality was calculated, not reckless, but deliberate, designed to disrupt rhythm and timing. None of it prevented her from producing efficiently. That is a significant data point for every other coaching staff in this league. They threw multiple defensive schemes at her, and she navigated each one. Indiana's roster around her is still developing its identity. That was visible in this game. The offensive pieces are present. Kelsey Mitchell provides the kind of speed in transition that defenses cannot simply rotate to cover. The Fever's pace creates conversion opportunities that most half-court heavy teams cannot generate. When Clark is distributing and Mitchell is running, the combination produces a rhythm that is genuinely difficult to interrupt. But Indiana needs more than a two-player connection to build a sustained offensive system around. The defensive side is where questions linger. Dallas got comfortable too often in this game. Paige Buchers found her footing. Odyssey Sims attacked with confidence, and the wing's ball movement created confusion in Indiana's rotations that compounded over possessions. Once a defense starts scrambling, open looks appear everywhere, and that is what happened. Dallas hit open threes, they got downhill consistently, they played faster than Indiana wanted for extended stretches. That is a reversal of the Fever's intended identity. A team built around pace and offensive pressure should not be allowing opponents to push the tempo. Indiana did, and it cost them. It is worth acknowledging what Buchers brought to this game because it would be easy to overlook her contribution inside the broader narrative about Clark. Buchers was composed. She did not look like a player still adjusting to the pro level. She ran the offense with the ball moving on time, and she made defensive decisions with awareness and poise. She did not get drawn into the moment of the Clark matchup in a way that disrupted her own game. That is a difficult thing to maintain, and she managed it. If Buchers continues at that level, Dallas will be a team with real depth at the guard position and a legitimate claim to contention in this conference. That is good for the league. It is also a measuring stick for Indiana, because this matchup is going to matter more as the season progresses. The broader concern for the Fever, the one that does not disappear simply because Clark is performing at an elite level, is dependency. When one player is generating the efficiency, creating the spacing, stabilizing the scoring, and absorbing the entirety of the opposing team's defensive game plan, the system becomes fragile in a specific way. Clark can cover mistakes. She can create offense from nothing. She can convert at the free throw line when the half-court stalls. But those are compensations for structural problems, not solutions to them. Championship-level teams in this league are built with multiple sources of pressure. They do not rely on one player to solve every defensive adjustment. They have answers in the half-court when a primary option is taken away. Indiana is not that yet. This game made that clear. It also made clear that Clark has developed far enough that the ceiling of what this team can become is genuinely high. Those two things are simultaneously true. There was one additional element to Clark's game that deserves attention, because it speaks to something less statistical. Her mental pace in this game was different from what was visible at points last season. In certain situations during her first year, teams could speed her up. A hard trap, a sudden change in defensive coverage, or a breakdown in the half-court could disrupt her timing and force decisions she did not entirely want to make. Some of those moments resulted in turnovers, some resulted in inefficient possessions that stalled Indiana's momentum. That looked markedly different against Dallas. The game speed did not appear to affect her. When Dallas went to an aggressive trap, she absorbed it and found the right outlet. When the coverage changed mid-possession, she adjusted without hesitation. She looked patient in a way that is difficult to teach, a patience born of experience, of having seen enough coverages and defended enough schemes to know that the open option will appear if she holds the defense long enough. That is the development of basketball intelligence over time. It is exactly what teams hope to see in a player entering her second year, and Clark is demonstrating it clearly. The arena response to her was notable in its own right. Every time she advanced the ball across half-court, the crowd's anticipation was audible. Fans were watching with the specific attention reserved for a player they believe might do something unusual at any given moment. That anticipation places a specific kind of pressure on a player. It demands production, and it adds weight to every possession. Clark played through it as though it were not there. That composure under crowd pressure is not a given. Young players can find that energy destabilizing. It can accelerate decisions or compress the time a player allows herself to make a read. Clark does not appear to experience it that way. She seems, at this point, to process the crowd as atmosphere rather than pressure present, but not consequential. That is a characteristic shared by a specific category of player. The ones who do not distinguish between the weight of the moment and the weight of any other possession. Every great performer in this sport eventually develops that quality, or they are limited by its absence. Clark already has it. The Fever enter this season in a different position than they occupied at the start of her rookie year. The patience available to a young team learning its identity has a shelf life, and Clark's emergence has shortened it considerably. The standard around Indiana has shifted. The expectation is not simply that Clark will perform, it is that the team will perform, and that the pieces around her will develop into something cohesive and defensively credible enough to compete for a title over a full season. This game was one data point. Preseason games do not carry standings weight. And what Indiana looks like in October does not determine what they look like in September. But habits form early. Communication patterns between defenders either develop or they do not. The attention paid to rotation coverage and transition responsibility. Those things establish themselves through repetition in games exactly like this one. What the Fever show in these early games is not proof of what they will be, but it is evidence of where the work still needs to happen. Clark's production is not the problem. It is not even close to the problem. She is already operating as one of the most complete offensive guards in this league, and she is doing it while defenses build their entire game plan around eliminating her. That she continues to produce efficiently under those conditions is a strong signal about her long-term trajectory. The team around her still has ground to cover. The defense needs to find its footing. The rotations need to tighten. The communication on the back end of possessions, especially when Dallas or any other team begins to find rhythm in the half-court, needs to improve. Those are the things to watch as the season develops. Not whether Clark will continue to be exceptional. That question has been answered with enough regularity now that it no longer requires asking. The question is whether Indiana as a unit will grow into the team that a player of her caliber deserves to be operating within. What this game showed is that they are not there yet. What it also showed is that the distance between where they are and where they need to be is not insurmountable. Clark is already playing like someone who knows how to win at this level. The team is still learning. The gap between those two realities is where Indiana's season will be determined.